Greetings, students. Today we're doing the second half of Unit 3, the counseling competencies, and we're going to be addressing the Code of Ethics. So, the National Association of Alcoholism and Drug Abuse Counselors, known as NAADAC, N-A-A-D-A-C, put together a Code of Ethics. And this is a statement of the values of the profession and serves as a guide for making clinical decisions in substance abuse treatment settings. So we will go into the NAADAC Code of Ethics for Counseling for Substance Abuse Counseling Professionals. And the purpose and the use of the Code of Ethics is one, the NAADAC Code of Ethics is designed as a statement of the values of the profession and as a guide for making clinical decisions. So, values are things that you believe in, that you think are important. And so they're saying that this is a statement of that for the professionals working in this particular field. And also that it serves as a guide for making clinical decisions when you have those tough, challenging times. And then the next thing is the code was written to govern the conduct of NAADAC members and its accepted standard of conduct for addiction professionals. So they want to have something that's uniform, something that, every profession, as we said, it's transdisciplinary, has their particular specialty code of ethics belonging to their specialty field. But in this area, it's saying that anybody who works in this area needs to have the same standards for conducting themselves as addiction professionals. And so the code is utilized by state certification boards and educational institutions to evaluate the behavior of addiction professionals. So the state certification board has certain criteria that they say that you must follow, first of all, to be identified as a professional in this field, and second of all, the conduct that is needed to be carried out during the time that you're practicing in this field. And the educational institutions say there's certain things that you have to cover in the academic curriculum to be able to assure that your addiction professionals are demonstrating the appropriate behavior. So, addiction professionals and the use of the codes of ethics. Ethics are generally regarded as the standards that govern the conduct of a counseling profession. Any counseling profession has ethics, okay, that set the standards. The standards are rules and regulations that govern, which means that says what you can and can't do. So ethics is essential to the safe and effective delivery of care to individuals seeking addiction treatment. So every person who is seeking service from you needs to be able to expect that their professional is acting in a safe and effective way and understands what is the professional standard for delivery of services. And here, counselors who have successfully dealt with addictive disorders in their own lives can often relate to their clients with profound understanding, empathy, and clarity. However, there's also the danger of being overly devoted to a treatment approach that worked for you personally and you found successful and you feel that is the answer for everyone. So addiction professionals may face various types of ethical dilemmas and challenges while delivering care to individuals seeking their services. So counselors with less than several years of recovery time may easily lose their objectivity when dealing with clients whose clinical picture mirrors the counselor's own personal experience. Could create heightened levels. Here, you need to have heightened levels of consultation and supervision. This is highly recommended and advisable in such circumstances, just to make sure that you're being objective, that thing, if something doesn't sound right, feel right, and making sure that somebody's shepherding you in the correct direction during those challenging situations. It is not ethically appropriate for a counselor in a 12-step program to sponsor their own clients or to chair a meeting where they are employed. So addiction professionals must ensure they deliver care in accordance with the various codes of ethics, as well as state and federal laws, to effectively deliver the care individuals require and rely on. The NAADAC Code of Ethics is designed, how it's designed, and its design is, the code is designed as a statement of values of the profession and as a guide for making clinical decisions. This code is also utilized by state certification boards and educational institutions to evaluate the behavior of addiction professionals and to guide the certification process. So the board is the one who looks at your credentials, looks at everything that you've done to meet the criteria for being nationally certified. And if a client feels that their rights have been violated and want to make a complaint, they make it to the board. And then the board does an investigation and decides whether any action needs to be taken. And sometimes the action, unfortunately, has to do with revoking your license, or suspending your license, or putting you on probation. There's a wide range of things until you take the necessary measures to be able to reinstate it, if in fact that is an opportunity that you do, that you have. And educational institutions also make sure that you learn certain knowledge, that you have a certain knowledge base through the course curriculum, as well as through the internship, to assure that you are getting an opportunity to practice under the professional guidance of someone. So when working with a client and the professional encounters an ethical dilemma, the Code of Ethics can aid in developing a course of action to efficiently and effectively resolve the ethical dilemma, utilizing the decision-making model and ensuring that the client's best interest is at hand. So the Code of Ethics also helps, like, it's this framework that sometimes when you have a question and you say, wow, the client said this or that or is doing this, but I don't really think that's what should be going on, or should I be saying this, or should I be doing this? In addition to your supervisor, a good source to go to is the Code of Ethics and see where it's covered there. And then you use the decision-making model. We talked about the decision-making model earlier in the course. And when you make a decision, you decide what the problem is, and everyone decides what the problem is, and maybe you may have a different interpretation of that. And then you have to look at the pros and the cons of using a certain methodology, style, or accepting an activity or strategy. But it says that this is a good time when you have those challenging incidents to use the Code of Ethics as a guideline. And then the principles of the NAADAC Code of Ethics. Well, Smith and Hodges defines ethics as human reflecting self-consciously on the act of being a moral being. So they're saying that a human reflecting on self-consciously on the act of being a human moral being is what a definition of an ethic would be. It implies a process of self-reflection and awareness of how to behave in a moral sense. So the NAADAC Code of Ethics is broken down into 9 major sections or principles. And even though there's 9 sections, each section, I had you in your syllabus also, there was a link to the NAADAC Code of Ethics so that you can have access to those and learn what it says underneath those for when you go to your internship and begin your practice. There's 9 sections, but under those 9 sections, each section has a large section of information that points out different items that fall within that. And so now that you have your drug worksheets, put them in your little notebook, put your counseling competencies TAP 21 series publication, and then put your code of ethics in there and utilize that as you go through your courses and your internship. So in the first, so we know that these principles are a set of ethical best practices that apply to universal ethical deliberation. And here, under Principle 1, it calls for the counseling relationship. And underneath it, oh my gosh, there's all this information that fits under the counseling relationship. It talks about dual relationships. It talks about the group and who is the client in the group. It talks about boundaries. Professional boundaries is one of the most important, and crossing those with sexual boundaries and that is the number one complaint that boards receive from the code of violating the code of ethics. And so this covers informed consent, limits of confidentiality, dealing with mandated clients, the rules and regulations about that, which can be very challenging, working with multiple therapists, and determining legal competency, whether someone is able to make a decision for themselves or not. And of course, it also addresses documentation. Under the principle number 2, confidentiality and privileged communication, it's going to cover things like imminent danger. If a person's a danger to themselves, a danger to others, they committed a crime, they're going to kill somebody, they're going to kill themselves, what it is, what responsibilities you have in reporting. And telling the client before you start counseling when it is that you have to report certain things. It talks about the courts and what the information is that's going to go back and forth, and what you have to tell your client and what you have to tell the courts, and what to do when you're dealing with minors in terms of what is confidential, what is not. And also with privacy, what is private and what isn't private. It's also covers where how you keep your storage of your records, how safe are they, how private are they, and disclosing information and how you go about disclosing information. And then it talks about the documentation of how you do all of this, and also regarding videotaping, because some places video record, and what the client has to know, and what's documented, and what you can actually video. And principle 3 has to do with professional responsibility and workplace standards. And professional responsibility has to do with the fact that you are non-discriminatory in your practice, and that any violations that you commit need to be reported. Any criminal activity that you commit needs to be reported. If you're harassing anyone, and if you have the appropriate credentials, and are you renewing them on time? Do you have the license that you're supposed to be having to do what you're supposed to be doing? And the scope of practice, are you practicing in an area that you have skills for and expertise, and it's documented? Are you doing continuing education, and what documentation do you have for that? And the use of supervision, and how you're documenting the use of supervision. Principle 4 has to do with working in a culturally diverse world. And here it covers the area of advocacy and how you need to have linguistic specialty, like I had said, about having a translator, sensitivity to the culture, what kind of methodology you're going to be using. Remember that the majority of programs were designed with the population in mind, and 60% of the population in most drug programs were white Caucasian males. So you need to look at the methodology used, awareness and knowledge of cultural differences among your clients, and be familiar with their cultures and religions and beliefs. That's all your responsibility and under the Code of Ethics. And so Principle 5 has to do with assessment, evaluation, and intervention. This covers the validity and reliability of the instruments you're using, the cultural inferences, how you're dealing with diagnosis and what tools you're using for that, referrals, and how you're making those referrals, and are they, you can always tell the client, here's 3 places that you can go visit, blah, 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 and you give them the address and the phone number, and guess what? You didn't even check and see if the phone number was there or the program was existing anymore. And so written consent for forensic evaluations, that's your responsibility to look into the details about what is valid in that area. And a continuation here is Principle 6 has to do with e-therapy, e-supervision, and social media. And e-therapy refers to the provision of services using technology like electronic devices and resources like teletherapy, real-time video-based therapy, emails, texting, chatting, and cloud storage. You know, in all of these, it has to be HIPAA compliant, and you have to have encryption programs most of the time. Yeah, you're the one who has to have the responsibility to ensure that the electronic forms of communication are safe and are confidential. So awareness, you need to be aware of the state and federal laws that explain the client and the policies and procedures specifically to using social media in a client relationship. Like, do not get on Facebook, do not look at their Facebook, do not have them look at your, if they saw you at a quinceañera drinking a beer, or you saw them associating with somebody that they weren't, and you have to report it. So you need to look into all those things in detail. And then Principle 7, supervision and consultation. That covers the responsibilities of timely feedback to your client. I mean, if you do an intake and you know, I know that these programs have waiting lists, but it is against the Code of Ethics to not get back to them on a timely basis in terms of feedback, evaluations, and constructive consultation. Use the appropriate boundaries, be respectful of your client, and only have relevant relationships. And so resolving ethical concerns, refer to the Code of Ethics and uphold the standards. And of course, NAADAC has the jurisdiction to investigate you, and it will investigate all violations without looking at any consequences to you or the client, unless you investigation shows that you did have a violation of the Code of Ethics. Also, there's it addresses retaliation. And then the next one is on research and publication. If you ever are involved in that with your agency, you need to look thoroughly at the informed consent and the confidentiality factor there, and any other client protection on welfare data availability that you're going to be publishing, you need to get proprietary rights from people that you used as subjects. So the State Code of Ethics and federal law and regulations are required to protect and safeguard substance use disorder rights. It is to protect the client. Of course, you're being responsible by taking responsible actions, and the Code of Ethics will help you shape that through its guidance and supervision. I have another video here about a lady who is an addiction counselor, and she hits on some of the aspects of counseling and the law and code of ethics. Thanks for listening.